Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Play Xenosaga Episode 3. Last time, we began this database dive. This time, we shall continue it. Ziggy. It is possible that Ziggy's heart knew peace for the first time after a Voyager was sent away after the destruction of Micton. No one knows how much longer his brain will survive, considering he's gone through a few of these procedures to extend his life at this point. But after, basically, not realians, cyborgs can only really live so long. They were never designed to be this long-term solution. No one knows how much longer his brain will survive. However, for as long as he can, he'll do what he was unable to do before, dedicate his life to protecting those he cared about. As I've mentioned before, his attempt to take down Voyager basically resulted in him losing all of his friends save for one, and then, dying himself. Jin. While he shared a deep connection with Pellegrini during his time in the Federation military, they never walked the same path again due to differences in their relative situations. It is a particularly sad conclusion considering that his mother Aoi Uzuki, like Pellegrini, had inherited the bloodline of the immigrant fleet. So yes, Jin and Shion both were part of the immigrant fleet, hence why they were on Miltia at the time. It's just that pretty much everyone in the family had forsaken what Utik was doing and moved on, save for Suo, her father, because he was making use of their resources in order to help out his wife and Shion. But yeah, they basically had the same background, the same heritage. So it's kind of strange that they never ended up together because of that. Well, they did, and then they didn't. Though his life was lost defending Chaos in the Zarathustra battle, his spirit, his consciousness, travels alongside Nephilim to the distant land of Lost Jerusalem. Perhaps his consciousness, like those of countless others, lies in sleep eternal, awaiting the appointed day, till a time when all has gathered. And he becomes Satan Uzuki. No, not really. Sergius the 27th. Now, this is the one that we dealt with in episode 2. So, like all people of the Zohar, people of the immigrant fleet, possess the ability to make contact with the faint waves put out by the Zohar. But as enormous Patriarch, his power was stronger than normal. It is believed that is what allowed him to control Proto-Merkaba remotely. Because they never explained this, and I didn't even really bring it up at the time, I was too busy bitching about other things, but his powers were not as fully awakened as those as the test subjects kept in Labyrinthos, who had made direct contact with Udu. He was just kind of piggybacking off of these waves. Telos. Over 80% of the body structure is based on the reanimated body of Mary Magdalene recovered at Rennes-le-Château, and thus can rightly be described as flesh and blood. The reason why Telos nevertheless vastly surpasses KOS-MOS' earlier frame is because Telos interfaces directly with the UMN, which basically runs through both imaginary and actually it runs through imaginary space. That's how they were able to move at light speed travel with it, because if it's imaginary space and there's no physical aspect to it, doesn't really matter where you are, it's all imaginary. So you're here or there or the other way. That's what allows them to go. That's their hyperspeed tube goes through imaginary space. And regulating the material domain data, sure, whatever. But basically, yeah, she was able to do that, so she's tapping into power far beyond what KOS-MOS is able to do at the time. Intending to assimilate the consciousness of KOS-MOS, the half of Mary that exists in imaginary space, and become a single whole, Telos is instead defeated, and, it's kind of weird. If you look at that, the final line there, Telos is derived from the ancient Greek word. If you scroll up to right above where I took the first one from, yeah, they kind of screwed up on that one. It's there too. Nephilim, the illusionary girl who repeatedly appeared before Shion with the sound of a chime. Now, that chime, I'll put a picture on if I remember to do so, of her from like episode 1 or something like that. The chime is supposed to be an echo from Xenogears, where, if you recall, we saw Phase Cross, which had something to do with, what's the name of the place? Whatever, doesn't matter. Basically, this pendant that he had appeared on screen whenever he was having kind of like a crisis, or when it was about to appear, or something like that, kind of showed his breaking point. Well, she wears basically the same pendant. And that's just another callback. Actually, if you look in the character viewer, you can zoom in on the characters. I know I showed them in the ending there when I was doing my review to avoid having to do a whole bunch of swimsuits in addition to all this work. But when we were in there, I blew one of them up on Abel. Now, according to one research piece that I was looking at, it's potential that if you have a high enough definition TV, his little name tag says Abel Wong, and a direct callback to Fei Fong Wong and the previous Abels that were all part of his bloodline anyway. So it's a nice little touch. I zoomed it out to take a look. I can't make it out, but the name looks short enough to have been Wong. So sure, maybe. I guess someone was asked about it on Twitter, one of the people that was involved in it, like 2010, 2011, and they said, just, what do you think? And I was just like, really? Nice. Anyway, she existed as a human during the era of Lost Jerusalem. At the time, the Zohar was excavated from Lake Turkana, shipped to Toronto, Canada, and they did all their research on it. Grimoire Vernum completed the controlled program Lemegeton based on the ancient language that had been unearthed from the same ruins as the Zohar. Basically, this information, we'll get into some more about this, but was a Lemegeton, the words of God. This was brought by KOS. And what it was something that could not be spoken by humanity. Like our vocal cords just could not do it. And so when he brought it, he showed the Messiah, Jesus Christ. And Jesus gave it words, and it became a kind of a lesson chant over time that kind of had a similar effect of kind of communicating through the Zohar to Udu, but not enough, but just kind of a little bit. And so if there was enough people chanting these words, which originally had nothing to do with it, then it kind of worked, and it worked a little bit. That translation was what was recorded, and that's what they unearthed. So it was changed from then, and then he deciphered it, but it was an incomplete translation. And then it was eventually brought up again by Joachim, who again wasn't able to fully interpret it, hence why down the line it just becomes more and more diluted. Anyway, the system went out of control during the experiment, and the young girl, Nephilim, Vernum's daughter, became the first to disappear. As that happened, Abel appeared. There was actually a connection. Udu spent a significant amount of energy trying to analyze and learn about Nephilim because she was different. Do realize that occurrence has already happened at this point, who knows how many times. And Nephilim will be someone that he's seeing for a separate time. So he's already seen Uriev and Voyager and people trying to manipulate things and get scared. Nephilim didn't get scared. As you can see throughout the entire series, she's never really scared. She's just there trying to help. She basically lives in the imaginary plane at this point, and that's why she's very rarely able to communicate with people, and why usually the only person who can see her is Shion, because she can communicate beyond that barrier. The disappearance phenomenon continued to expand from the control experiment, and eventually erasing all of Earth from dimensional space. After that, it coincided with Abel, so there's a cause and effect relationship between the two. Basically, as Nephilim disappeared, Abel appeared. That was kind of, it's a symbol or a representation of Udu spending more time focusing on looking into the physical realm. In order for him to look into the physical realm, he needs to have a physical representation in that realm. In this case, Abel, which is why, of course, Abel basically doesn't die, because he's there as an idea or a projection of God. So he's not going to go anywhere. Song of Nephilim is a result of amplifying wavelengths created by an incomplete Lemegeton translation through the use of a giant tuning fork. Cool. The system was designed and built by Joachim. Again, so far down the line. Okay, before we get into Mary Magdalene, just to kind of continue where I was going there, just going through all my notes and trying to incorporate things as we go. So Udu, as we were kind of talking about with Nephilim, is not really this evil thing that he was originally kind of referred to of in episode 1. Udu is God, but he's not an individual. So what he wants is to experience why people are the way they are, why people seem to be moving toward destruction, their own destruction, the destruction of the universe, whatever. He's trying to figure it out. That's why he keeps looking in. That's why Abel's been around for however many thousands of years. He just wants to learn about people. The reason why he ended up being kind of referred to as this evil thing and everyone wants him dead or whatever, they're afraid of him, it's all because of Uriev. Uriev's the one who does all of that after Uriev sees Udu through the transfer experiment. He ends up seeing the end, gets super, super scared, and basically through his information, everyone starts to believe that it's, Udu is this evil entity and to be afraid of. It's just anytime communication with Udu happens, people get overwhelmed. So it's a communication error more than anything else, which, considering we've looked at this, Udu is God for all these games, and we were kind of thinking, well, shit, we might end up fighting this guy. No, it's kind of anticlimactic that way. That kind of leads me to the UMN, which I don't think I have a thing on right now, but as we know, UMN is the collective unconscious. It exists in imaginary space, which is what I've already mentioned. When Uriev went through it unprotected, when he was part of the first transfer experiment, that is when Udu was able to kind of come in contact with him. And the reason for that is because Udu is much easier able to come in contact with the imaginary realm. They don't really go into great details as why, but that seems to be the case. With that being said, Mary Magdalene was basically who we expected her. She's the representation of Animus. This is kind of the important bit here. In the story, she's called the partner of the Messiah. It was unknown whether she is actually the historical figure of Mary Magdalene. That is entirely there to kind of make shit so people don't jump down their throats and say, you can't depict the holy blah, blah, blah. Yeah, whatever. We all know. Anyway, she shared a bond with Shion in the past life. It is implied that they were super close friends, that maybe Shion was a follower of Mary Magdalene, just like the apostles were followers of Jesus, very much in the same light. They never imply that they had any other relation other than that, but they call her the partner of the Messiah. The thing is, we never see her with the Messiah directly. We see her always next to Chaos. And that kind of leads into something I kind of wanted to talk about with reference to Chaos. Chaos is basically the power behind all of the miracles of the Messiah. The reason we know Chaos is behind the Messiah's miracles is by looking through all the perfect work stuff, and in there we learn that basically his entire role is to activate Lemegeton to protect the higher dimensional plane. Now, if he's going to do this, he needs the Lemegeton ability needs to be able to connect to the upper domain to gather the energy in order to do this. That's basically how he did all of the miracles, and basically he's activating the miracles, and the Messiah was just the figurehead, the good talker, the sweet talker, the smooth talker, the figurehead that allowed it all to come together. He was the what's a good word for that? He had the charisma. And considering that, some additional information behind that is that the name Yeshua, which was given to Chaos in ancient times. Well, through Hebrew and 16,000 different translations, and I'm half wrong and half right on this, so don't jump down my throat if I'm half wrong. I understand that. I've read Wikipedia, but the Hebrew name Yeshua, through different translations, eventually translates to Jesus. Now, basically, they've tried to explain this and hint at it at different points throughout the game. Chaos is the power behind the Messiah, Jesus Christ. He's basically God. So, in a sense, if you want to wrap it all up metaphysical like, it all kind of works. Basically, God acting through chaos, acting through the Messiah, and your whole timeline that exists in real life works just fine, if you believe that. Not really, but... Anyway, yeah, he was basically behind most of the miracles. That's pretty much it. Okay, let's get back to present day. Though she was given the bodily appearance of a child by Joachim Mizrahi, this is only a temporary measure until the final adjustments can be made to her functionalities. She was designed to be transferred from her current body, and this is like, I think the only time this is ever talked about, save for in like reference to Canaan, of Realians transferring bodies. But once the capabilities and central nervous system network are complete, allowing her the possibility of growing into an adult woman in the future. Also, the transgenic type is a hybrid of human genes, and if I recall correctly, that name, Alchemia, it's supposed to be, if it's read, it's supposed to be available in here. It's not. It's not there at all. They just completely forgot about it or shouldn't have read it. Oop. Yeah, we were down to the 4th paragraph, 5th paragraph. Yes, Momo in her finalized form shares an affinity with human cells because of all the research done through characters like Fabronia in order to kind of get to her point. She would potentially be able to conceive a child. So they've basically gone here. Artificial life, human life, biological life, whatever you want to call it. They've bridged the gap. Joachim Mizrahi was a goddamn genius. A little crazy, but he was a genius. Regular Realians only have their Gnosis anti-Gnosis abilities in common with Momo. They are manufactured by the Galaxy Federation government. Their abilities are similar to regular Realians, making Momo entirely unique. She's the only one who can do that. It's not a 100 series thing. She left at the dawn of the new era, or she left at the dawn of the new era after the events in Mictum, began to work with Ziggy, Yuli, and the others in order to rebuild the world, affirming her beliefs that construction of a new network was the path to saving the world. She believed that such a network promised a reunion with those who had already departed, so she's basically working to catch up to Junior. And the fact that she's able to potentially have children at this point and be upgraded to a new body tells more so of the expanded world that awaits them once we move into this new universe, this new world that we've created by not enacting eternal recurrence. That's all for this one, and I'll see you guys next time.